Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, creator and host, and founder of the Feely Human Collective. This is episode 204 on Befriending Mystery with Rachel and Derek of your favorite Heretics. Rachel, Derek, and I explore Christian deconstruction, the toxicity of forgiveness, religious and church trauma, making peace with uncertainty, and, as I mentioned, befriending mystery. I really enjoyed this chat, really loved listening to Rachel and Derek talk about their experience with church trauma, their experience with deconstruction, and atheism, and mental health, and therapy, and we talk about capitalism in the church, and the cosmic narcissist God, and gaslighting, and trauma bonding, and just a rich conversation I really quite enjoyed. And it's funny because after we got done recording, I reflected to Derek and Rachel how I was feeling. I was really depressed at the time, and I was feeling really low, and my energy was very low. And and I was thinking, God, I just, because I want to show up for people in a way that's on, and in a way that's I guess better, but in reflecting on that, that's just who I am, and that's how sometimes I show up. And anyways, I also listened back and thought it was great, and I was fine. And of course, Rachel and Derek were amazing. So I'm being hard on myself, is what I'm saying. And maybe that's a reminder to you to maybe not be so hard on yourself as well. So before we get to my episode, or this episode with Rachel and Derek, I wanted to remind you that for the rest of the year, so the rest of December 2021, I have a buy one, get one free sale in the shop. And that means if you buy a shirt, you can get a shirt or something that costs less than a shirt. You get a pin, get a free pin for a friend, stickers, mugs, etc. Yeah, take advantage. Buy one, get one. Rest of the year. And the last thing I will plug is Patreon, which is where you can get a bonus episode of this podcast every month. It's $5 a month. It supports me and the work I do. And last thing is, let's get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts. We're still at the 160-ish range. I think we can get to 200. So if you haven't left a review, please do so. And please share the show with a friend. Grow the show, as one of my favorite podcasters, Rory and Dan of the Pen Pals podcast, say. Grow that show. # grow the show. So yeah, please do that. Thank you. Independent podcasting, sometimes you can feel like you're just talking into a vacuum, into the ether, like no one's listening. So please rate and review and subscribe. Thank you very much. Now let's get to it. This is episode 204 on Befriending Mystery with Rachel and Derek of, you know what? I'm going to make a quick edit here and say, what I forgot to say is the shop and Feely Human are at feelyhuman.co. So make sure the shop is there. That's where you can sign up for workshops and connect with me, and make sure to follow Feely Human and Yumi Empathy on Instagram at Feely Human and at Yumi Empathy. I'm all over the place, but I don't care. I'm going to leave it all in. Let's get to the episode. Episode 204 on Befriending Mystery with Rachel and Derek of your favorite Heretics. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. Yumi Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm here with my favorite deconstructionist duo, the creators of your favorite Heretics, a beautiful and essential safe space for recovery from church trauma. It's Rachel and Derek Myers. Hello, you two.
Ooh, hey.
Hey, no.
Hey.
Thank you so much for having us. We are so excited about this conversation.
Very happy to have you. Been wanting to make this happen for a while. Good to see your faces. Good to hear your voices. Let's get right into it. We always kick off the show with an emotional check-in. Let's start with you, Rachel. How are you feeling?
You know, as much as I want to say I'm doing great, I'm actually really exhausted. I had a beautiful trip in Joshua Tree with some amazing other women, like Brenda from God is Gray, Joe Lumen, Lauren Deliri, Blair from Talk Period to Me, like all of my favorite people and like some other amazing women, like in one space, just like not doing content, not doing any creating and just being. And it was so great. But since I've been home, it's been like nonstop. So it's just a lot of exhaustion, but like a beautiful exhaustion because I'm enjoying all of it. It's just, I'm so tired, I need like a space from like the beautiful parts of my life for a moment. I know that sounds so terrible, but like just some rest.
Yeah, I feel that. Are you an introvert at all?
I think the best way to describe it is an ambivert, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I can be very extroverted in extroverted situations and then be like, okay, being by myself. But I would say I definitely prefer like my close community. So
yeah. There's this funny thing we do as humans, and I just want to relate this because I wonder if you can relate, which is you have this beautiful time with your friends. You connect. It's beautiful. It's everything you want. And also, it's okay to have like hard feelings about it. It can be beautiful and it could be like, oh, I'm exhausted by this and I need space again and I need rest.
Exactly.
All those things. It's all valid.
I think we all agreed that like it was the perfect amount of time and we were all happy to go home, but sad to leave one another, and it's just that kind of like mutual understanding that this is like a moment in time to like create beautiful memories. And it was just such a nice, natural leaving. Like we weren't like, oh, I wish it was longer, like naturally we want to be around each other, but it was just such a nice, like no pressure, no expectation, just really great time. So, but I was very excited to get back to my kids and see Derek and just be home in a little bit of schedule and routine,
For sure. Yeah, I get that. How about you, Derek? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I share in that exhaustion. I mean, I think we both, it's like the give and take of partnership. Like, when one person is feeling the weight of, a lot of responsibility and commitments and things like that, it starts to affect the other person. And I think, we're just in this time where we're kind of navigating some new spaces. Like Rachel just recently started a new job, and so our schedules are all over the place. And sleep is like, what is that? I don't know what it is. And so that definitely plays a factor into, my emotional state of being. And I think for me, I'm trying to find those spaces to cultivate, to really practice self-love and self-care. And I think that's really hard because in ways where that should feel really exciting and satisfying. It feels like more work, like another thing to check off the to-do list. And, right now it feels like I can barely keep everything on my plate. So I guess I'm kind of at capacity in different ways, and I'm doing all right overall, I would say. But I think at the same time, I'm definitely like, I kind of want to get a weekend to disappear for a minute. Like, that'd be really nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So overall, doing okay.
I feel that. I mean, I'm not a parent, and I feel that, Tarek. I think there is this thing that, and maybe it's, it's the system we live in. All these systems we live in. The thing that comes last is the like looking inward. Is the like what am I listening to myself like? And you have like all of the things. You have Rachel. You have your kids. You have your dad stuff. And then you and your heart comes last. And I feel like many of us can relate to that. I certainly can.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's the old analogy that I come back to often of putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first is so important, but how often we're kind of pressured to put it on everyone else and put ourselves last, which is only to the detriment of everyone else that we want to take care of and want to be there for. So yeah, I really wish I had a better handle on all that. But yeah, like even last night, I got to a space where I pulled out a book and I was really excited to read a little bit. And, I started nodding off to fall asleep, which isn't a bad thing, but just like one of those things that, even those things that we look forward to, sometimes our bodies are just like, nope,
yeah,
you don't even have it in you to do it. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I relate to that. So you two are in this space that is frankly kind of new to me, this sort of deconstructionist space. And by new, I mean like it has been in my brain for a long time, in my heart for a long time, though I've never sort of really had a word for it. I haven't been in the church, so to speak, for a long time. And I'm wondering for you, like at the top, as we sort of get into this stuff deeper, if you can share your thoughts on what sort of deconstruction means to you, what it means to you. How do you define it? That sort of thing.
So I actually was in a very similar space as you when we made the account. Deconstruction was a very new term to me. I had been having a really challenging time with faith experiences for a while. I don't think I really was consistent with church going for like 4 years. Derek has a different journey than I do, but he felt like he needed to go to this particular church, and I was very put off from it. But it kind of like, that is when our deconstruction was happening and coinciding. We just didn't realize that that's what was happening. Like he felt the pressure to attend, and I felt pushed out, not from him, but just from the spaces because of my difficulties, because I didn't have words. I just felt the weight of this judgment from the people around me, from like this almighty being. And it was like plaguing. I didn't know how to experience other than I felt like I don't even know the right word. I just felt very like sick in their eyes, like spiritually. When my body was just like telling me like, this is not right. This is not right. But you just hear like, oh, that's your flesh. Like everything that you can tell yourself to put doubt in your brain, that your body's like screaming at you to leave certain spaces or challenge certain ideologies. There's almost this like hook, line, and sinker within Christian theology that pulls you right back in and tells you you're wrong to experience those things. So that was very much my experience, not having words, because, and I hate using this, like it's very cult-like. You put doubt in anything outside of that specific denomination that you're in.
Right.
So when I stopped going and I actually getting my degree in religion at UGA. It's not a seminary school. It was world religions. I loved it. That's when I really started giving myself the space to challenge these thoughts. And so I feel like a lot of people who stumble on deconstruction and that language, it's not new to them, but it feels very safe for them because it's something that validates what they've been experiencing, possibly by themselves for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful experience. I remember discovering the Enneagram in 2014. And that being such a validating experience for me because I was always told by people in a very negative way that I always needed to have my plate full. I just could never rest. I always ran from things. I always did this stuff. And so understanding my experience as normal and experiencing it from a place of neutrality rather than right or wrong is so freeing. And so I feel like this space of deconstruction, while I will be the first in line to say, like, burn it all down if it starts becoming abusive, because it, people get very excited when they find this space, but also we can, I think, always do better. And so just constantly understanding deconstruction is not where it ends, but staying accountable and responsible to ourselves and to the other people around us, to ensure that we're pursuing help for all and agency for all. I think it's really valuable. So, but yeah, I just see it as it being a very liberating space, one that people can stay in for the rest of their lives, and one that's, a pit stop onto something else for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really is just beautiful because it's free. So yeah, that's my take on deconstruction. I feel like it's always evolving too, which I think is just so beautiful.
Yeah. And I want to hear Derek's thoughts, but I just have to insert myself for a second and say what I am drawn to it because the parallels of my work and mental health are very similar in that I am sort of coming from this, okay, so I grew up in this environment that was very evangelical, that was very rigid, right? Very rule-based, very fear-based, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I started to come into myself and sort of look at my depression and the eating disorder that I went through and, abusive father, all that stuff, right? I started leaning harder into, as I healed, leaning harder into curiosity and softness and openness and sort of this idea that, like you said it yourself very beautifully, Rachel, which is there is no endpoint here. Like this is just the sort of the messy journey of seeking, right? And I think there are parallels there between sort of like the work of self-awareness and the work of deconstruction are very similar. I think it's about liberation ultimately, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll let Derek speak in a second, but I don't know if you knew this about me. I struggled with anorexia and bulimia for about 12 years, and I was hospitalized and
I didn't know that.
Rehab for about 4 times through my journey. So that's something we also have in common, which I think is a really valuable experience, not one that I think we deserved or one that we should have experienced, but one that we can definitely connect on.
We can. And, it's funny, the eating disorder space, I struggle with anorexia and it was a control response for me. It was like, I am feeling sort of lost and not seen in this rigidity world.
Yeah.
And let me sort of take that into my own hands in a very dysregulated way, in an unhealthy way, but it's what I needed to do at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyways, how about you, Derek? What's your experience with deconstruction and what it means to you?
Yeah, I feel like my experience is constantly like redefining how I see and understand deconstruction. I think quite simply, it's a removing of harmful beliefs and practices and looking to integrate healthier and more inclusive ones. And I think the deepest thing that has continued to drive a lot of my deconstruction has been love, like just being really, I guess, not okay with the evangelical definition of love. And the more and more time went on, like, I found myself, what really initiated my deconstruction was when I became a dad, and I started to look at my son and, have this kind of different perspective of the divine. And, we're told we're children of God and God's our father and all these things. And I was like, but I can't reconcile a good and loving father torturing any of his children, no matter what amount of finite, horrible, things that they could do.
Sure.
And so I began to really be honest with my questions around hell and my questions around God's justice and love. And, some of those things that weren't exactly satisfying as far as like the typical pat answers that are given, And so I remember coming across some certain people and just feeling like my eyes were opened and I was just like waking up from a bad nightmare. And I know for a while I had to shelve it because I wasn't quite ready to have my whole world turned upside down. It can be a really disorienting experience. I know for a good bit, and many have shared the same feeling, is that it feels frightening. You're being honest that the framework of certainty that you've been promised and handed, and you've been essentially modeled this consistent cognitive dissonance, and that is what it means to have faith, is like the more cognitive dissonance that you have and the more you resist your doubts
and the more you can detach yourself from emotions and feelings.
Yeah, it's like the more spiritual you are, in a sense. It's like, well, that's weird. And on top of that, it just became such a freeing thing. I loved what you said, earlier about, it being about liberation. I really, really resonate with that. I've got freedom tattooed on my wrist, and that's meant so much to me for a long time. Our son's middle name is Freedom, our firstborn. And so that word has really been, I guess, core to my deconstruction as well. It was leaving a lot of those fear-based beliefs and, stepping into more of this universal, inclusive spirituality that understands that, everyone belongs. There's no one on the outside. There's no we're better than them, us versus them sort of mentality. It really made me feel free from this exhaustive sort of way of being. A lot of my life, I struggled with the performative aspects of Christianity and believing that I just had to do more and more and more to try to please God, and found my mental health completely just in shambles at times.
Yeah.
I've struggled with depression at different points in my life. I've been clinically diagnosed with OCD and ADHD as well, but OCD and religious OCD were really, really some dark times throughout my process. And I think a lot of that was exacerbated by the broken system that promised this certainty, and certainty really just doesn't check out in our experiences. And I think that that's where people reach a lot of different crossroads and can either embrace a process of deconstruction or choose to, dig their heels deeper into that cognitive dissonance. So yeah, I mean, going back to what I was saying about the hell stuff, that moment of becoming a dad and really just being honest with, okay, either God is loving and good, or, there's something fundamentally wrong about what we've understood this to be. And so, yeah, that kind of initiated things. And from there, it just, it was kind of like one domino after another. But I think where I'm at now, it's learning to be okay with uncertainty, learning to not need to have all the answers. It's like, I think deconstruction really gives you permission to not land anywhere. Like, you don't need to prove what you believe about every little thing. You can make peace with your questions, and you can learn to befriend mystery and learn to move through the world in a loving and generous way that's not being dogmatic or fundamentalist, and, extend the hand of fellowship, if you will, to people who see the world completely different. And I think that's what makes life so rich and valuable. Is now you don't. One of the biggest freeing things for me as well was, I don't have to save everybody. Like, I don't have to. I used to be so overwhelmed even going into public spaces, thinking that, oh, God was going to tell me to go evangelize to someone, and it tormented me. Literally, like, you can ask Rachel. I mean,
it's really bad.
I had so much anxiety all the time because I constantly felt like I had to be always doing. And I didn't know what it was like to just be at peace with myself. And when I was able to just realize that I can love and learn from everyone, and it's not my job. I'm not this, it's kind of deconstructing the colonizer mindset of like, I've got the answers and you need to bend to my way of seeing the world. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's really important to have that curiosity about how other people see the world, how other people, view reality and their experience. I think that's what it means to be human. We're all so unique, and we have such valuable things to learn from one another. So yeah, for me, deconstruction is really just making peace with the uncertainty. So yeah.
I love that. That's very wonderfully said. And it's how I see the world. It's how I see sort of the work of really empathy too, right? Like, empathy is about softness and curiosity and meeting people where they are and allowing people to show up in the way that they need to be, right? It's not like agreeing to disagree. It's not moralizing. It's about sort of showing up, and let's be like curious, and let's scrutinize our own baggage here. Let's scrutinize our own. Let's use critical thinking. Let's think about the own assumption, the assumptions we make of people and of groups, right? And like, when I sort of first started like questioning my sort of upbringing and the faith that I was brought up in, it was those types of thoughts. It was like, this feels like, I love what Rachel said about like how it felt just off. Like, in my body, it felt off. I didn't know at that time like how to reconcile those feelings, but it just felt off, and it felt like there was a disconnect between what was being shown me in terms of like Christ himself, his teachings, and how people responded to it, and how people sort of, you said the colonizer mindset, Derek, the biblical Jesus versus the colonizer Jesus, right? Like, it's a very different space. And I don't know how we got there. I mean, I can make assumptions. I think there's anxiety at play. There's fear. There's prejudice. There's leaning into that binary mindset. There's all of that stuff at play. Question for you, both of you, like, do you remember like when you first started sort of questioning, and like, do you have like a moment that sort of sticks out in your noggin?
So yes, but I wanted to circle back real quick to like how we got here is a lot of, so part of my, sorry, I am so exhausted, as I said early on. Part of my degree was studying how we got here, and specifically how it's tied to mission work. And I think it's really interesting that our version of church today looks a lot like power, looks a lot like privilege, and it looks a lot like always changing, or how should I say this? Capitalism. So like always doing more, always demanding more from your faith, from yourself, and how it's very, and I'm sure with your work, you've seen in a lot of abusive spaces, putting the responsibility on the individual rather than looking at the systems and the structures at play. If you can trick a whole congregation that they have individual responsibility for the abuse of the people in power, then you will always have a system that works to keep those in power protected. And so that's why, honestly, that's what completely like turned my eyes open, was realizing that me being distracted every single day, that I was never doing enough for God, that I had to read my Bible more, that if I said fuck, that I would be morally like just in the pit of hell, essentially. Like if I could stay distracted by those things, I would never look beyond me to see these structures that are so toxic, so abusive. And then if I did see them, it would be because, well, we're all sinners. We all need compassion. We all need remorse. But where was the compassion for the actual victim, including myself? You know, there was time we were only obligated to forgive, and forgiveness. You're awful if you don't forgive. That's terrible. Why do I need to forgive to heal? Like, being completely serious, I do not need to forgive to heal. And it makes me so mad when people say that, because there are absolutely unforgivable, unspeakable things. And to put that like burden on a survivor to forgive some of the worst offenses that can happen and say that they can't move on until they've forgiven. And it's like this language like, oh, well, it's not forgiving them for them. It's you must forgive them to heal yourself. And it's like, no, let's stop this like pretend game that I need to forgive to move on, and just understand and sit with the fact that I was deeply wronged and give myself that space so that I can move on. Because people are so afraid to see themselves as victims, because we need to be, and like, I'm not saying like that you need to sit in it if you don't want to, but like, we're so afraid to like let ourselves grieve for ourselves that we need to like displace for some reason. Anyway, I could go on and on about how I have just sat in this frustration, because like I will never forgive one of the people that wronged me in a church space. And I am so stuck on that, because that's not my obligation. It is their obligation to stop being a person. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just need to interrupt, because the forgiveness thing, I've gotten it a lot myself. Like, you have to forgive, you have to forgive. And if you don't, you are lost. You're a lost little boy. Right. And I like, as someone who hasn't read the Bible in a long time, like, where does that come from? Like, is it biblical, or like where, like, what are your thoughts around like the forgiveness obsession?
I think it's the whole forgive as you've been forgiven. It's been
and like bitterness is like a stumbling block.
Yeah.
And like your heart will become impure. That was always me. Like I had to overextend because my heart would be impure.
Well, here's the thing too, is how the Bible's been weaponized. And that's been one of my biggest passions in deconstruction, is to, you know, expose a lot of the harm that's been done at the hands of Scripture. I mean, the whole advent of inerrancy in the last couple hundred years or so has been one of the most damaging doctrines and I don't know that I can think of. And it's a sneaky one, because it lurks under the surface of a lot of different things, but it's how it informs how so many people read the Bible. And what it does is it takes things like, you know, looking at various books that are written over thousands of years within an ancient Near Eastern culture, and it makes it to where these are infallible, untouchable, straight from the mouth of God words. And if you disagree with them and they're not true for your experience, then you're wrong.
Yeah.
And so it causes this. And here's the thing, is that when you look at the entirety of the 66 books, if you're Protestant, more if you're Catholic or, you know, Eastern Orthodox or whatever it may be, they don't all say the same thing. They come from various different perspectives. The Bible doesn't agree with itself because it's not univocal. And the whole thing that I'm saying this for is because even when it's like, well, does the Bible say that? Well, the Bible doesn't say anything, number one. And it's like the equivalent of us walking into a library and being like, well, does the library say it? What do you mean? Like there's a lot in the library. Like you can pick up various books from different sections that say lots of things. But so anyway, it's just silly, just the different coded language, the Christianese, the things that have been so ingrained in us that we just, again, people don't think about it. The whole critical thinking that you even brought up. So like even the verses that like say, forgive as you've been forgiven, for example, is that a prescriptive, you must do it like thus saith the Lord sort of thing? No. And number two, like, even if it was like something someone felt compelled that God showed them and to write down as a letter to a church or wherever it may be, that could be a piece of wisdom that may be helpful, or that may have been culturally a helpful idea in a certain time within a certain context. But, as shocking as it is to 21st century evangelical Christians, the Bible wasn't written for them. It wasn't written to them. It was, you can utilize it and glean a lot of wisdom and great things. And just for prefacing, that doesn't sound right. Just for, what's the word? Wow, that totally just left my brain. Just for context. I don't know. What I was going to say is that to preface what I'm saying, I hate using the term. I still consider myself Christian, but not that.
Like he's like a cool Christian. Like he's not one of those.
Oh, okay. He's like electric guitar in church and stuff like that.
Oh gosh. No, I have a very messy relationship with that term, but
yeah.
My point of even bringing that up is that any critique that I am giving is also from that place, so that I still think that the Bible is useful to an extent. I just don't think that it's this magical preserved book of perfection that needs to be universally applied and it's equally authoritative. No, that's bullshit. Like, you can take away truth from it just as much as you could take away truth from a lot of great books that we have today.
Yeah.
Don't agree with a lot of it because there's a lot of harmful ideas, because people have projected a lot of their own experiences onto the divine. You see a lot of violent, retributive pictures of the divine throughout a lot of the text. And, even ideas like just forgive, no questions asked, do it. Like, as we understand mental health and some of those things that, you're passionate about, we're passionate about.
Yeah.
That's not it's not just a simple.
Right. Mental health is then like mocked because it's modern. And it's like, no, we just have better language because we have better science. We have better understanding. We have more time. We have more technology. And that's what I hate is like this like non-movement in these spaces to keep people like stuck,
to keep, Well, yeah. And it controls people's thinking because you're not allowed to think outside of this box that is, the bookends of scripture. Like this is, yeah.
But I want to say like, and I'm very understanding in this area because I don't think that a lot of people realize what's happening or what they're doing, because it's even like some of the most prominent pastors are stuck in this cycle and they don't even understand how that has come to be. And they are a part of this system and they just can't see it because the language is so limited and because fear has such power. I don't think that these certain pastors that are sitting in their, like pulpit are like laughing their asses off because they have their congregants stuck in this weaponized space. Like they are genuinely like it hurts them too, but to answer your question, before I went on this like forgiveness rant, and I will say, like, just because I don't forgive does not mean that I'm still bitter. And I think that's really important to distinct because a lot of people feel like you have to have no bitterness, but like, even if I'm bitter at that person, literally these are made up things. Like, can we just all agree that like like a lot of like psychology, while like we understand like science behind the brain and data and statistics, like a lot of these concepts, like you must forgive, are like made up things, and we can understand how things work better. Like for me, like DBT does not work very well. EFT does. And EFT is a made up system by an amazing psychologist. That is made up, but it is useful, you know? And so that's where I'm just kind of like, these are made up things. Anyway, I don't need to forgive. And I'm going to like stay in that. But to answer your question,
well, they're tools, right?
They're made up tools that are very helpful or can be very harmful. And you see them everywhere. But anyway, I just wanted to like do that little caveat before I actually answered your question. So for me, my biggest thing, I was atheist growing up. I only converted to Christianity when I was 20. I'm now almost 30. I'll be 30 in a few months. So it's been like a 10-year journey for me, that I did air quotes, which is why I said that weird. I know they will not be seeing the video, but, it's been a 10-year journey of me like becoming very evangelical fundamentalist, like to the point of like having no friends outside of Christian spaces and being like the most judgmental and I was the worst. To then going through this really low of like experiencing what it was like to feel spiritually abandoned when I was on this high for a super long time of I'm saved and, you know, I'm special and all of this stuff, to then just this really low of like, I'm worthless, I'm judged all the time. And I feel like all of it was a red flag for me. Like even when I was like up on my high, I'm like, this just feels really strange because like I'm promised these things like peace, humility, patience, kindness.
Yeah, we're still waiting on the humility piece to
literally,
come to
I
fruition.
am the most humble person. And I am so offended he would ever even question that.
The most humble. She reminds me of
I could literally get a tattoo.
The number one humbled person. Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Seriously, the most humble. Anyway, so let me just talk more about myself.
That's what humble people do.
So what happened was like on this high, like I was super spiritual and I had all the language and like there was like an actual radical conversion moment for me. Like there was no question, like this atheist who like was in and out of rehab to this like just 180 churchgoer, loved God, like literally there was no question that my experience was real. And I think that I really challenge a lot of people who say that you can't be unsaved because I am that. And so it's like denying my existence and my experience. So people have to make things up about my journey to fit them. And so I have to deal with a lot of misrepresentation and a lot of people thinking that I'm lying or that I didn't actually experience these things. But even on my highest, like in like really awesome communities, really awesome, what I thought was awesome mentorship, really awesome friendships, like I still felt very prideful. I still felt very like give and take in the spiritual. Like I had to be superior to everyone around me. And it just like, I was in my early 20s. So it made me feel special. It made me feel important. It made me feel more important than the people around me. And like, that was always a red flag, but I loved the feeling. And then when I became like, I went through a really traumatic event and that really changed a lot for me. It really questioned my relationship with God. If he loved me, he became very punitive and judgmental. And then it was like, where did my love for God go? Why am I not special? Why are you not answering my prayers? Why is the community around me treating me like I'm more broken? Why are they asking me to go get coffee? Why are they being intentional with me in ways that they weren't before? It's because I was leaving, you know, and it just hurts so much because it's not that I didn't feel special anymore. I felt really misunderstood. And I felt really, really just
like a project.
Tormented, like a project. And Derek can attest to that through the past 4 years that he went to church and I didn't, which was a while ago. But that was like a really defining moment in our marriage. But I just realized, like, in hindsight, it was all a game, and it was all based on emotion and based off of what people around me were doing. And I just couldn't coincide these things that I read in the Bible and like everyone around me. It wasn't a church. It wasn't a people. It was just a system. And I always find it so interesting when people like comment and say, well, you just haven't really experienced true Christianity. You just haven't really experienced these things. And
or
I'm like,
if abuse is pointed out, then, oh, that wasn't real Christianity.
But it's not even that. It's just saying like God is so much more peaceful and loving than you could ever imagine. And I just wish that you would experience that. I'm like, I did genuinely experience that with my whole being. I did. And it's so hurtful for people to say that I just needed to experience more. And then I wouldn't be where I am, because I like where I am, and it also doesn't invalidate my experience of being a Christian.
Well, they're putting the guilt on you too for like, oh, if you only would have just done this, like the guilt goes back on you. Like they're trying to like.
Right. But I think also even further than that, we can see that like, because it's a system and because there's language, they can even not believe it themselves or not feel it themselves. But we're so trained to tell people these things that have left or that are struggling, even if you don't believe it, because then you are a good Christian, because you like contested for God. And it still hurts. I'm not going to lie. And I don't like admitting that because it makes me feel weak. It makes me feel unhealed. But like, just very genuinely, like, I don't think it will ever not hurt, because that's misrepresenting my experience. That's still positioning authority over me and belittling where I am. And then also, like, if you genuinely feel that way, then you would not feel the burden to constantly remind people of that. Just like, I can find this like really new thing and love it and want to share it with people, but to the point of like this almost guilt tripping, that's not normal. Like, can we just all agree? Like, if you feel this burden that you need to share something because you will either be rewarded or punished, that is then called trauma bonding. That is not healthy. And I would not have to feel this burden to constantly share it if it was healthy. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yep.
And it's 99% of the time, it's not from a place of being rewarded.
I want you to experience this too. No, you don't.
It's from a place of fear. It's like 99%. I certainty I can say that it's from a place of either being afraid of letting God down or disappointing God or sinning by not sharing X, Y, and Z, or like, yeah, it's like the whole, not wanting to miss the mark and then have that lead to this downward spiral of you going down the slippery slope and falling away because you just, anyway, if there's so much pressure and there's
it's
so much
like nuanced that it's so hard to have conversations, because it's like our definition of love is entirely different as well.
Well,
and that's, but that's just what is like, it's almost like you have to prove that you're worthy of this love, because they believe that love is this truth that is not even remotely, if we're talking about theology and we're talking about what's right and what's wrong, they have this idea of what theology is, and they will then measure how much or how little they are allowed to love you and treat you and respect you. And it's funny, like having my degree in this, like having gone to a Bible college, and then also on top of that, having my degree in like scholarly academic space, like religion, experiencing that in that way. Like I experience religion very differently, more in an academic way. Like I love studying it. But like, if we're going to talk about church history and what's common orthodoxy, like you guys are a far cry from that. So please don't try and love me by telling me the truth, because that actually isn't true. That's just what you believe in this moment. And that's where your bias is. And that's what you believe the Holy Spirit will be confirming. So just like our ideas of love are very, very different, because for me, love is experiencing life with somebody and enjoying them and giving them safety and allowing them space to feel heard and feel broken, and that there's no pressure for them to change. And if something's going on and they become harmful, like being with them, but also holding your boundaries, like that's love.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't think love is this far removed thing where you're a sinner.
Well, I think when you have a picture of God that resembles a cosmic narcissist, and you've been conditioned to receive spiritual abuse from leaders who mirror that kind of image, then you're taught to not only like gaslight yourself, but you're taught to then love in a way that resembles like abusive relationships. And that abuse is just like, it's top down, but it's also like all passed around within that space. And that's not to negate that there are healthier churches or healthier, friendships. I still have plenty of friends who are still within some of those spaces. But my point is that love is self-evident in the sense that you don't need to go through all these gymnastics to prove what you're doing is loving.
Right.
And I think that a lot of evangelicalism is convincing itself
love is going to look like hate to your neighbor. Oh,
right.
God.
Yeah. There's that tweet going around. But I mean, the reality is that love shouldn't have to be over-explained. It's experience, right? It's a universal experience to humanity. And while it may look different and feel different and be received different and even given different, there's still something that rings true innately, inherently, that we know, oh, that's love. Yeah. Not like, oh, that, our bodies aren't like, that feels weird. That's not love. Like, it's crazy the amount of indoctrination and things that go on to convince people from truly practicing critical thinking. I know we keep going back to that, but yeah. I mean, I think about conversations that you and I can have with any people who in our lives are still in those fundamentalist spaces. And because they're so stuck in this place that I can't give myself permission to critically think or to go outside of certain parameters, because it's high stakes. Like if you question this, like if you question your sexuality, or if you question hell, or if you question the Bible, or all these things, the what if is like, well, then maybe I won't be saved, and maybe I'll be condemned to hell, and
all comes crumbling down.
Right. Have you heard that? And somebody like legitimately asked me this, and I've always seen it like in not memes, but like info. I don't know what they're even called. Like just like images with text.
Meme.
It's a meme, but it's not a meme.
Just like an infographic.
Kind of like infographic, but it's just like one of those inspirational tweets, or inspirational quotes on an image. But like that's how I always have seen it. But like I legitimately got asked the other day, like, well, what if you're wrong? Because if I'm wrong, I lose nothing. But if you're wrong, you lose everything. And it is like,
that's the,
like, that is the
Pascal's wager.
It's so sad because they will stay stuck in what their body is literally screaming at them to leave, unless you have more of like a superior identity and it works for you. I found that is like kind of like the, I don't even know the word. Basically, like people who benefit from these spaces love these spaces. People who are very harmed by these spaces, their body's screaming at them to leave.
It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it feels very good if it works for your ego, if it works for, your privilege, if it works for your like really punitive mindset where you want to see people suffer.
Need to be right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that need to be right, but it's also, I think, we crave certainty. We crave like having like some form of framework, I mean, anything from prayer, like if I just pray and do all these things and this is going to all work out. And, if I it's formulaic, really. There's a lot of that to it. So you don't have to sit with uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that promise of a sense of security and safety, navigating the world. And even though it's a lot of dark and weird ways of formulating it, it's still a framework that doesn't require you to have to critically think or, be comfortable with a bunch of uncertainty, apart from like, oh, well, God's ways are higher than our ways. And then just check out mentally. Like, there's all those answers that get people to, oh, just don't think about it. Don't lean on your own understanding, surrender it to God. Like, all those things that cause people who are having like deep, important questions about their experiences and their pain and, their desires, their longings, their way of seeing the world and framing their existence. Like it's so cheap to just flippantly give out these cliche answers that do nothing. Speaking of empathy, it completely removes any sense of empathy. It ticks the box and it's like, I can't deal with any real burdens or any real world issues. I've got to check out because it's like people haven't authentically connected with themselves and really given themselves space to check in with what's going on.
Well, when you tell yourself you're deceitful and you're wicked and you like inherently are a terrible person. And that the only thing that can relieve that is this really abusive, that they don't recognize, theology and space and image of community, then the way that we relate to ourselves is so messed up because we think we're terrible people. And then we think we deserve this like really strict, dualistic, punitive, like system. And I am in the camp that not me, I'm not Christian, but like when we were Christian, we served this almighty, like unimaginable, infinite God with like the brilliance that we don't even know, endless, huge, like all of the fantastic adjectives, amazing adjectives. Yet he chose a system that was punitive, or this imaginative, creative, loving God chose that. And that just does not align. And it's like, no, God's ways are not higher than my ways, because I genuinely would never look at my child and say that he deserves hell because he did something wrong, ever. I don't care what he did. I do not care. And that is the system that they're stuck in, is thinking that we exist in a very punitive world, in a world that demands justice, but justice is more about what I believe rather than how I behave, and create systems on this world that are also very neglected, just in every way. So I like just have no patience for that kind of thing. Like it is so very obvious that a world that craves power, financial gain, just fame and like superiority would create this like dogmatic, unimaginative, punitive religion out of honestly one of the coolest like scriptures that I love. Like I genuinely love the Christian and Jewish scriptures. I do, because I've done the work of decolonizing it and like decapitalizing it. And it's awesome. But then like, it's so funny that it just so happens to be that the things that we crave as humans, I guess, like power, fame, money, all the things I listed, are exactly what Christianity today looks like.
Right. Yeah.
And then they'll go on to say that it's so different from this world. No, it's not. Well, it literally is not.
And that's the thing. I mean, we talked, and you brought it up earlier about, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And I had some time of studying church history and whatnot, and it's really fascinating. You see these cycles that repeat, and there's periods where you see, somewhat of healthiness, change, reform, positive movement, and growth in the structure that is the church, and then it starts to get really, really bad and really nasty and awful, and then that cycle starts over. It gets healthier again a little bit, and so but that whole part of corruption all goes back to one thing. It's power. And power, specifically when married with empire. And empire today is most well known as America. You see nationalism running so rampant in the church. The last 4 years or more have exposed a lot of what's been lurking underneath the surface for a long time in the church. The fact of the matter is that when you have the church seeking power, when it's always been about giving away any sort of bit of power for the sake of love and generosity and service and the bettering of other people. I know we were joking about humility, but really, there's such a stark contrast between what the earliest grassroots essence of Christianity was, which was just a collection of people from all sorts of backgrounds gathering, sharing resources, very socialistic if you look at it. No one had any possessions that they called their own, and no one was in need. Interesting. But the truth of the matter is that it was never about this big machine. It was never about this. And it wasn't until really, I think, Constantine made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. And I think it was 327 or something like that, that heresy was starting to be called out. Later on, you have the creeds and the canonization of Scripture. I mean, all these things are contingent upon Christianity having this prominent influence, but at the hands of empire and power and government. And it just, like Rachel was saying, over time, you see no difference. There's no difference between the Christianity that we see largely in America and a lot of the power seeking, people who hold seats of governmental influence or whatever. The fact of the matter is that if this isn't about making a more healthy, inclusive, loving, and safe space for all people, and really, really simplifying and breaking it down into loving your neighbor, right? As crazy of a concept that is. When it's not about that, it becomes about so much more, and it turns into a lot of harmful and toxic practices, which is what we see, and it's unfortunate. And so I do have a little bit of hope, not a lot of hope, because I think we're always going to see the unfortunate corruption, but I have a little bit of hope that deconstruction and a lot of things that are happening with people who are, come from our upbringing and our tradition, they're going to start to say, you know what, and I'm seeing it happen. And I hope to continue to challenge a lot of ideology like we're doing, but say, you know what, let's get back to the root of things. What is it really about? It's about love. It's about love. And love, it really isn't dogmatic. Love isn't about what we are all about in our thoughts. It's about really helping and caring for people. And I really hope that that's kind of the next turning of the tide, and hopefully a better, healthier chapter post-evangelicalism for the church. I don't know, whatever.
He ends it with whatever.
Whatever.
No, I feel that, and I'm grateful to hear that you're hopeful, Derek, because I mean, and I would say that I'm hopeful too. I don't know if I have stakes in it, but I do, there are people in my direct family who are very rigid and, have given me a lot of this sort of rigidity, and I'm just the lost boy. I need to forgive.
The prodigal, right?
Yeah, I'm wrong. You need to not talk about your trauma because you need to give it to God, because that's what I do. A lot of that, right? And so like that hurts my heart. That upsets me. That angers me. That frustrates me. And I hope it's on its way out. Because ultimately what we're talking about here is like, there's so much denial of self that we do to ourselves, right? Like Derek, you mentioned struggling with depression, certainly Rachel with eating disorders. Like there's so much denial of self and isolation in mental health, in community, that happens that we just do to ourselves, right? And then you add the layer in all these layers of, toxic theology, capitalism, masculinity, all these like toxic systems that just further isolates, right? And further disconnects, which is as someone who's like trying to do the work of, and just as you are, Derek and Rachel, like do the work of connecting and doing the work of showing up, meeting people where they are in sort of open-hearted empathy. It's hard to face, and it's disheartening at times. And in moments, I know you feel this, in moments, I just want to burn it all down.
I agree. I think that, I really think that things do need to be burnt down too. Like there's just far too much harm and abuse. And, like you said, the neglect of self, it's horrible, growing up being told we're inherently sinful. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
That we're born in sin, we're immediately rebellious to God. Like all these really, really dark beliefs that are supposed to be the truest parts of who we are. And it does a lot to you, because if you are constantly like, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Oh, and my desires are wicked. And my mind is in opposition to God. Like all these things, like, how do you trust yourself? How do you feel safe in your body? How do you like walk around and look in the mirror and say, I love what I see? Like, how do you practice just any sort of self-confidence and self-care? And, and I'm with you. I think that there's been such a neglect of self in a way that's only done so much damage to the individual and collective, mental health that we've seen in society. And, it breaks my heart. I've suffered at the hands of that, and I've experienced the consequences of those really, really bad beliefs. And I know many probably who will even listen to this have experienced the same. And my hope and what we can attest to a lot of what's helped us over the years, especially, outside of deconstruction and through it, has been therapy. Therapy's been huge. And what a lifeline it's been.
It's great.
To have safe people, to create that safe attachment, to help our nervous systems, regulate, and to begin to heal from trauma. Like these are delicate processes, right? And you were talking about being soft and gentle with ourselves. Like that's so beautiful and needed. We spent so many years, and each person's experience might have been different, depending on their upbringing. But, I spent 20 some odd years of my life ensconced in this environment of harshness and rigidity, like you were saying. And gosh, it takes a lot of gentleness and a lot of patience with people who are loving and kind and non-judgmental, non-dualistic, and all these things to point you toward really rediscovering who you are.
Yeah.
And not gaslighting yourself anymore, and not shaming yourself or shoulding on yourself, as one of my therapists said at one point. We have a lot of beauty in each of us. And it's so sad that the core belief that we were handed was we're fundamentally broken, instead of we should be fundamentally beautiful, because we are,
Agreed. Yeah. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to speak. Sorry, I had to step away for a moment, but I was just going to talk about therapy. And I wanted to just kind of I feel like in deconstruction spaces, therapy is like the holy grail. And I have started to deconstruct that a little bit and just wanted to talk about like accessibility and shame around people not being able to go to therapy just because either it's not accessible, they can't find one that works for them, it's not affordable, it is so incredibly expensive.
Gotta love our systems.
And just like, you can't find somebody that relates to your specific experience. And so yes, therapy helped me personally. And I was so fortunate to be able to afford it. And I was so fortunate to find one that was safe and that had healthy boundaries. And that was healed herself enough. She's still human, but enough to be safe for me. But I wanted to say that community can be enough. Picking up a book can be enough. Being intentional with your body can be enough. And I feel like therapy is just a lot of catching up with what a lot of indigenous communities did in the past. And we're just now figuring it out in the West. Mm-hmm. And so while yes, therapy is a very beautiful and helpful tool, one that has helped me immensely and one that is still helping us, it is not the only thing that can heal you. Because this past weekend when I was in Joshua Tree with all those beautiful women was more of a return to self for me than anything has been in a long time, and I feel like it might be a little exclusive when we say that therapy is the only thing that we can do or is the most important thing that we can do. Because I feel like that is not an option, or that there can be a lot of past trauma from therapy as well.
Totally.
It's really important to have that caveat, because I don't want it to be very this way or the highway. So I just wanted to add that in there.
No, I appreciate it. It's always a good reminder. And I certainly don't believe that therapy is the only way. That type of thinking is the type of thinking that got us into all this trouble, right? In Christianity, in the world, in these systems that Derek mentioned, right? Yeah. I mean, certainly the issue of accessibility is a problem. And certainly it's not going to work for everyone. There are so many different paths, and that really is, I mean, if we're going to sort of look at this from a sort of bird's eye view, that really is the path, which is there's no one way, right? There's all these beautiful ways, because we are all of these beautiful ways of existing. We're mirrors for each other. We're rich tapestries of weirdness and fallibility and fuck upness and beauty and all of it, and all of it is valid and beautiful and should be should be explored and should, and I think the thing that I like to remind people of, and it's often a hurdle, and I guess probably especially a hurdle for folks sort of steeped in rigidity, is reminding ourselves that we are worthy of that exploration and curiosity, right? When there are so many systems, including theology, that says oh no, that's not right? And then, it goes back to what Derek said. Then we're just in this shame spiral. Then we're in this we're wrong spiral. Then, then you're a kid like me and you masturbate and you think you're going to hell. You're gonna, your dick's going to fall off or whatever, So, yeah. I do have a couple of questions from Instagram for you two.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
So this one's from MK Rockin on Instagram. They said, how do you move on from the trauma? How do you try to trust or even try to go back to church? Any thoughts on that?
For me, my journey led me away from church because part of my healing was understanding that I don't have to put myself in a space that I don't trust, because I'm not a very guarded person with who I share things with, but I'm a very guarded person with who I create intentionality with. And any space that first demands intentionality and just an upheaval of my soul and my emotion before creating safety is not a space that I necessarily trust. So I personally have healed through a lot of beautiful community, finding people online, finding very, very genuine connection where people feel safe for me. And that comes through knowing I can call someone and just like cry and be met with tenderness rather than met with an answer. Like I'm not looking for you to solve my problems. And I think that's a lot of expectation of going into conversations. Like if somebody comes to me with something, like I would much rather sit in them with it, knowing that I cannot solve their what they're going through, but I can offer a space for them to have that safety and that comfort to speak to me about it, because it's all internal. All of our healing is internal. We can utilize external tools, but just being guarded over what external tools we bring into our internal. And that's not being untrusting. That's knowing the value of like your internal, and the sacrifice that it is to speak to people who feel unsafe, Yeah. So that's my answer. Derek might have a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring that out too. That's a really good question. I think that there's ways to research, what certain churches believe. I think that's a great place to start. There are, organization or denominations that are more progressive, more open and inclusive. And I would steer people that direction if they're looking to be part of church communities. And depending on, if you live in a major city or, somewhere near a major city is also a big factor into it as well. So yeah. And if you can't find that in person, like Rachel was saying, like there's spaces online that foster that. We have a great private Facebook group of people who are, in all sorts of places, but it's been amazing to see how supportive people are. I mean, sharing everything from let's laugh at this ridiculous meme, like remember how crazy we were for thinking this way, and to gosh, I'm really struggling with my family and I have to, or hey, I just came out to my family or something like that, very vulnerable things. I mean, a wide spectrum, but I mean, that's life. Like life is everything from let's laugh at a meme to I'm in tears because, I don't know how to navigate a relationship with these people. So anyway, if anyone wants to find out how to access that group, they can check out the link in our bio and our Instagram. So yeah.
Great. I love those answers. Thank you. Yeah, no, I would just add that in addition to the safety piece, which is so crucial, and community and doing your homework in regards to like assessing your church, I would maybe reposition how you, questioner, said move on from trauma. I think there's a lot of sort of desire to move on from things or to move through them before we're ready. And so I would say give yourself space, find safe people, give yourself space to really kind of sit in it, to use Rachel's words, to sit in it, to be conscious of it, to allow for it to be what it is, because there is a lot of healing that can happen in those gray spaces and those hard places. And if you have safety around you in people, in communities online or what have you, it doesn't necessarily have to be a church. It could be in a friend who's just sits and is present with you. That can be very powerful. So just some thoughts. One other question, which is, I'm not exactly sure what they're meaning. Maybe they have some ulterior motive. We'll see. At Nick Paul 06 says, why do you teach that Christian evangelism and colonialism are the same? Do you teach that?
We don't. So we think that they influence one another. Definitely. Like there's, they said colonialism, right?
Yes.
Okay. So part of my studies was I did a project and a deep dive on missions, and it was literally called Christianity and Missions in Africa. Was my class, and I don't think you can necessarily separate colonialism from mission work. I think that's how it really began. When we look specific to the evangelical church, we studied specifically Norwegian Mission Society in Zululand. That was about 6 weeks of projects and research and presentations that we had to deliver ourselves to. And it was really, really fascinating how dark the roots are, because that was the first mission. Those were the first missionaries in Zululand, and just how they were treated, how like the Zulu people were treated, how they were then taxed to walk through Christian grounds in their own like cities and communities, how the shape of their houses started to change because Norway liked square houses where they liked circular, how they would speak about the Zulu people in their journals back home, their articles that they would send back home, how they would use those articles, how Norway would use those articles to then basically start taking over that land and use it against them. And they specifically used the language savages. And they would say, you must break their pride in order to humiliate them. It was called the humiliation thesis. You can look it up. To humiliate the people group so that they would feel that they needed these missionaries. So you can't separate mission work from colonialism. I don't think that is possible because it is colonization. Short-term missions, long-term missions, it doesn't matter. It's colonization. So while I don't believe that one is the other, I think that they are separate entities. I do believe that they are intrinsically linked and that the Venn diagram is like almost a circle, you know? But yeah, I think if you say it's not, it's because you are either told it's not by people who contribute to the system of colonization or because you've not decolonized. And I will point to people who do that work. I think No White Saviors on Instagram is a fabulous place to begin. I think Jo Lumen, she's a friend of mine, is phenomenal about talking about this. I'm trying to think more off the top of my head. I would say those are like the two big ones that you can go and look at immediately, that I trust, that I know. I think that that's my answer. And I think evangelical Christianity is a lot about mission work and a lot about evangelizing to your neighbor. And I think because evangelical Christianity started out of superiority and colonization just within America, and what we saw happened and study what happened with the indigenous communities that lived here and how they were murdered, displaced, how we don't even acknowledge the land that we're on. And that's the root of Christian nation America. You have to ask yourself, can you really separate it? I genuinely don't believe you can. I think they are linked. And so we have now this history of like overtaking this land and creating theology on top of our really, really dark history here, and justifying it. And so, no, I think evangelical Christianity, it's very fair to say you can't separate colonization from it. I don't think it is colonization in the sense that colonization and evangelical Christianity are the same definition, but I don't feel like they can ever be separated.
Yeah, agreed. Well, and I think in addition to just certainly all the history of oppression of indigenous peoples, that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is just in all of what we said before, which is like the colonial mindset, which exists within theology today, or Christian theology specifically today. So agreed. It's not, it's inseparable. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it goes back to, well, even what evangelism is, like that word evangelism is literally one who shares good news, right? And I mean, this is where it gets messy. What does it mean to even share good news? Like, you're loved. I think that's what good news is. And it's less of being dogmatic and more of teaching people how to live in a way of being loved and giving love away. And I remember Rachel having a really fascinating conversation with one of the department heads for the religion department at UGA, who's like one of the leading scholars in Joanine theology, which is another way to say like all the books that the Apostle John is accredited for writing. And do you remember what he said about the Great Commission or whatever? Making disciples. Do you remember that?
I don't, but please enlighten me.
Oh gosh.
I learned so much of my time there that I just don't even, he got snippets so he can remember things a little bit clearer than I can. The reason I was trying to defer to her is that I thought
because you forgot.
I should remember it with greater clarity, but I'll sum it up the best of what I can remember is that whole idea of making disciples is less to do with like creating people or causing people to think and believe in the exact same way that you do, and more to inform people of the way to love. If that's a really bad paraphrase, but essentially it all goes back to that. It's like teaching people that they're loved and helping people to become more loving humans. Like, and I think everybody wants that. Everyone wants to be more and more convinced with how loved they are. And everyone wants to know, hey, how can I be a better human and love those around me? You know, maybe I won't speak for everyone, but I think that there's a core part of us that really want that. So anyway,
I think that's it. I think that's everything really is like, I want to feel that. I want to be told I'm loved. I need to be told I'm loved because my fucking depression tells me that I'm not, like every day. I was like, I need it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you listeners that you are loved, and I'm going to tell Derek and Rachel that you are loved, and I love you as a fellow Feely human. And let's talk about empathy heroes. This is the part of the show toward the end where we each of us mentions someone in our lives who is an empathy hero, compassionate, feely person. Could be someone we know personally, could be a character from a story even we love. I'll go first to give you folks a second to think about yours. So I recently started EMDR therapy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Speaking of therapy, yeah, it's because of this depression. I've had clinical depression for a long time, but like it's just gotten worse over the years as I've aged. And my EMDR therapist, Gabriella, is my empathy hero this week because we sort of came to the conclusion that I'm very good at like talking about feelings. I'm very good about being very eloquent about like talking about all of the things related to the feelings and teaching people how to do it and doing it very well, sort of, but in the intellect way, right? Intellectual way. What I struggle with and where there's a disconnect is in how it really feels and shows up in my body. that there's a disconnect there. And I think it makes sense considering sort of past traumas and eating disorder and all that stuff. And so when she asked me like this week, she's like, how does that feel? Like really feel? I have words, but those words aren't really describing what's going on. So I am excited and scared about what is going to transpire over the next year in EMDR therapy. I'm grateful I get to do it, and hoping that I find some more sort of connection there. But Gabriella, my EMDR therapist, is my empathy hero for those reasons. How about you, Derek? You go first. Who's your empathy hero this week?
I have to say, one of my best friends, David, he's probably easily the most compassionate friend on a consistent basis. Like, just is so deeply encouraging in a way that he's someone that isn't like the friend that feels the need to fix something for you. It's just like, I want you to know I love you and I'm here for you. You're not alone. And, I've got your back, and just so supportive, so affirming. And I hope David listens to this and he gets a little smile on his face because he's a great friend and I'm very thankful for him. So
that's sweet. I love it. How about you, Rachel?
So for me, I would say one of my best friends, Katie C. Both of my best friends are named Katie, so it gets a little confusing. But Katie C has been consistently for years just the most genuine friend I could ask for. It's really hard for me to reach out to people a lot. And so they have to keep up with me. It's a lot of effort to be my friend. I have like 200 unread text messages. I just don't I can't answer calls all the time. I'm a very busy person and I love it that way. But she was a friend of me in high school. We lost touch after high school and then we reconnected and just have been inseparable since. And she's just somebody I know, like if I just need to bawl my eyes out, she is the most comfortable person for me to call because she's not frozen. She's not trying to figure out what to say to make it less uncomfortable. She's just there. And then she always has the most genuine and loving things to say. And it's never like, it's going to get better. It's just, we will get through this. I love you. We're going to get through this. It's making me tear up say it because it's just like, I want everybody to have a friend like her. Like, even if I don't talk to her every day or every week, like I know without a doubt that she is like my ride or die safest friend that I have. And we can just tell each other like the deepest, darkest things. And there's just absolutely zero judgment, zero need to fix each other. It's the safest friendship I've ever experienced.
I love that. We all need that. And I'm throwing an audible in here. I'm going to challenge both of you to either call this person separately or send them a text just expressing how much you love them.
I will.
All right. Well, Derek, Rachel, where can the Feely humans out there connect with you to?
Your favorite heretics on Instagram. We have been less active this month because of just the crazy with our son being in the hospital, me starting a new job. I was sick. I'm just now getting my voice back. You can kind of hear it still crackly. Or as we mentioned before, our Facebook page, we moderate. We have to approve posts, so it's really safe there. Or our personal Instagrams, our personal Twitters. Mine is Rachel's a Heretic and Derek's is Derek the Heretic. So
can you see a theme going?
Yeah.
Maybe?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Reclaiming a term that was used against us. So
yeah. No, I love it.
But thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you too very, very much. And listeners, those links will be in the show notes for this episode at feelyhuman.co. And the last thing I will say as we exit here is I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring, pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.
La, la, la.